Well, good evening from San Antonio, Texas. This is Matt Scherer. I'm the co-founder of the Military Transition Roundtable. And from time to time, we do special webinars like the one we're doing this evening. Tonight, we're talking about explaining gaps in your work history. And I'm fortunate to have my good friend Charles Schwartz, longtime talent acquisition advisor for a variety of companies and positions, to be my guest. Along with him is Sam Mitchell, who's part of the Military Transition Roundtable. And as we got to work with Sam and we met Charles, we got to put these two guys together because as you're going to find out, Sam had some unique challenges in his work history, and we're going to discuss that this evening with the help of Charles. So Charles, let's start this by just giving a little bit of a background about yourself. And why don't you tell people how we met each other?
Well, Matt and I both went to Illinois State University, and he was on the school paper, the Vidette, and one of my friends was given Hall of Fame award for his work on the Vidette, and so Matt and I met at the awards ceremony. As far as a little background about myself, I've been recruiting for 24 years. I had my own agency for a number of years, and then after the pandemic kind of took care of that, I went to work for Boeing. And so now I have both external and internal experience in talent acquisition.
Thanks for sharing that, Charles. Sam, a little bit of background about yourself as well.
Okay, so I was a 28-year veteran in the United States Army. I went to college at the United States Military Academy, did 28 years. I retired back in 2017 as a lieutenant colonel. Since then, during my entire time, I was a signal officer. I deployed all over the world, and I ended up having some gaps in my work history after I retired.
So let's talk about one of those challenges you faced, Sam. What happened with your parents? Can you explain that to us?
Yes. So I left the military. I took about a year off, just getting my house in order and things like that. You know, you get a retirement check after 20 years. And I went to work at Honeywell for about a year. And then I had to leave Honeywell because my wife got sick. She had a couple of issues with her health, and I had to go back home. I ended up spending about a year taking care of her and taking care of our budding dog breeding business. And just when I was getting ready to get back into the workforce, I ended up having a problem. My stepfather ended up having a problem with his health, and I had to move away from home to New Mexico from Texas to help take care of my elderly parents as well as their farm.
And so that's when I suggested you talk to Charles. And Charles, what was the advice that you gave to Sam as far as the gap in his work history?
What I told Sam is the best approach is just to be upfront about it. You know, if you don't list the gap, then people are going to notice. You know, recruiters can figure out a lot of things by your resume, from when you graduated, what you're doing now. And so there's really, the best approach is just to be upfront about it. So I said to just list it like a job. So put down the dates that you had the gap, and then bullet point it just like you would a professional job. So if you ran a business, you ran care, you moved any items, you took care of people's financial estates, anything that could possibly be used by your next position is excellent experience that you can still list as a resume towards matching the skills of whatever job you want to apply for.
So one of the audiences I know we talk to here at the Military Transition Roundtable is a military spouse. What would you say to someone who's a military spouse raising a family, you know, and how would you help them explain that gap?
So again, with that, I would list it out like raising a family and running a household is a position, and list the things you managed. Maybe you were responsible for the finances, for arranging for moves, for purchasing items for the household, for running things like lawn care, or being, for instance, like a general contractor and hiring different tradespeople to maintain the house. Anything that you did during that time that could transition, that the skills could transition into a professional opportunity, list them out.
So
And then,
we're talking about bridging your gap there, Charles. Let's just kind of go through some of the things that you just mentioned. For example, skills, obviously, you know, when you're raising a family or you're taking time off like Sam did, you have to continue with your skills. When you and I were talking about, we were talking about logistics. How would logistics, which is a very desirable skill, be valued by someone like yourself?
from a recruiting standpoint,
From a recruiting standpoint, yes, sir.
exactly. Well, in this case, then you would be applying for logistics opportunities. And so then I would mention what kind of products you were shipping to where, and how they were packaged, and how you went about hiring the services that you hired, and how you negotiated the deal. Anything that you would do in the job that you're applying for that you did during your gap would be very important.
Would something like if you were the person in charge of the local PTA carnival or an event like that, and you were bringing all people together, would that be something that you would put under the logistics piece of that?
Well, it depends. If you are ordering a lot of things, then, and also responsible for receiving and distributing and all the things that you would do in a position, then I would list it. And then, of course, there's also additional business related skills. You might be in charge of the accounting, the finances, the marketing, the advertising, getting commitments for people that are going to help to sponsor the event. Whatever you did that would be related to business in addition to just the logistics piece, then I would list that as well.
So we're showing this slide of budget, okay? Sam, you obviously had some budgeting concerns when you went to help your relatives. What were some of the budget things that you did while you were
Well, so when I ended up going to my second help area, which was my elderly parents, they actually had a farm, and they had horses and some livestock and things like that. And because my stepdad couldn't work anymore, his income was his Social Security and his military retirement. So basically, I had to break down what the finances were, that, to keep the horses fed, to keep the feed coming in. Are there any veterinary visits that need to happen if there was a veterinary emergency, and understanding what those costs were and being able to relate that to my folks, because that was their pocket money, and also being a good steward of that, so that, we weren't going overboard. We were making sure that the livestock, the horses, and the farm, basically the care on the farm that I couldn't do myself, was being done. So to budget that out, to make sure that it was not a spike every month, it was something that was leveled out, was something that I had to do to make sure that, they weren't depleting all of their finances while my stepfather was recovering and not able to work.
So I'm going to push the question over to you, Charles. You know this about Sam because Sam's put in his resume that he did this. What would you ask him to explain to you as part of your sourcing interviews?
What I typically do, so every job order that I have with Boeing is broken into two areas. They're broken into basic qualifications, which are things you absolutely have to get the job, and then also preferred qualifications, which are more general. And so what I would try to do is go through what are the absolute requirements and ask him questions that would help him to explain how what he did during his gap would directly apply to what I need in order to push him through to a manager.
Okay. So one of the things I see with what Sam was doing also with your typical military spouse with children is teamwork. How can you convey those skills in your resume and also in an interview, Charles?
Well, in the resume, like I said, what I would do is bullet point it. Unfortunately, the average recruiter spends maybe a minute, 2 minutes looking over the resume just because it's really that quick to see if you're listing the things that they need or don't need. And so it's important to look through the requirement that you're interested in applying for and then make sure that your bullet points address the skills that are required for the job. And so that is how I would stage it if I were looking for a position. Now, the other really important thing to do, especially for more technical roles, is take the skills you have, figure out what you want to do, and then find what kind of certifications, qualifications, what can you do to address the gap that you have and help the recruiters to be able to push it through to a manager. So if you're doing project manager, go ahead and get your PMP certification. If you're doing cybersecurity, get your Security Plus. If you're network person, get your Network Plus. So those are things that do not take a 4-year degree. You could do it sometimes as quick as 2 weeks, other times within 6 weeks. And so you can show that you really have a passion or interest in the roles that you're applying to and that you're technically capable of doing the job.
Let me ask you a question here, Charles. You know, you're a military spouse, and now you're going back to school and you're working towards a specific degree. How would you value that?
I would value it very highly because it shows a commitment to improving those skills in that area.
Okay. So,
And also it shows me that you're up to date because the certifications are always changing to match whatever new requirements there are in order to be successful in doing the position. So unfortunately, if your certification was 4 or 5 years ago, it's not that helpful. If it's a current certification or a new certification, that's always a big plus.
so college is one thing, online training, you know, and Sam, I know you did some of that while you were with your parents and your relatives. So explain what you did while you were not working full time.
Also, I always believe, and I've come to believe this, is that in the military, whether you're a senior NCO or an officer, you're a project manager, and you lead people, you manage equipment, you manage things that you're being told to do, and everybody has a vast amount of experience. The problem is that in order to get to the door on a project management position, you have to have the certification. I didn't have the certification, but I had tons of experience. So I decided that in my time where I wasn't taking care of the horses or I wasn't working at during the day at nighttime, I would spend a few hours working on my certification. And for the folks that'll come along and watch this, there's plenty of organizations out there that will help you with training to get your certification done. In my case, I got my project management professional done. It was about a six-month program. They had a whole bunch of online courses that you could take at your own pace, and you had a bunch of retests or testing capability that allowed you to get prepared for the exam. So that's what I did. I did the online course at night or when I had downtime, and which was a lot of, in that case, was a lot of VTCs and reading and things like that, and just practice the tests because I had the extra time. And then I got my certification after I felt that I was strong enough to be able to take the test.
So what kind of impression would you have after you saw that Sam took those 6 months to complete his training while raising horses and taking care of parents? What's the impression you would have gotten from that, Charles?
Well, it would tell me a couple things. Number one, he was truly interested in if I was recruiting for a project manager role and I saw that he took the time and effort to get his PMP. That would show me that he's really interested in being a project manager versus, you know, for instance, just randomly going, well, I did some of that in the military. I'm going to just apply for those jobs. So it really shows me that he's focused. It also shows me that regardless of what challenges life is throwing at him, he finds a way to find time to be successful in completing a task. And so that's big. And also it tells me that he's up to date on the new processes, procedures, paperwork, keeping track of tasks, all the things that are so important in a project manager role, that he's capable of doing that.
So if you're joining us, and I see a couple people have joined us, we're talking about gaps in your work history and how do you share those gaps with people like Charles who are recruiters. And Charles, you said something a few minutes ago, and I'd like to reiterate it. Why is it important to identify why you had a gap in your work history?
Because we'll figure it out. I mean, and you know, we could see how many years since you graduated, how many years since you started the job, when, and on your resume, you have to put when you started and when you finished, because every job does verification. In the military, they won't disclose anything personal, but they'll tell us what your dates of service were.
Yeah.
And so there's absolutely there's no benefit in trying to work around it. It's much better to just put it out there and explain why if asked, and then also put down what you learned and what you were able to do with that time that would keep you relevant for a professional opportunity.
Thank you for that answer. So once again, this is part of the Military Transition Roundtable's ongoing series of webinars. This is a short webinar. Tonight, we're just talking about gaps in your work history. We're with Charles Schwartz and Sam Mitchell. Sam, you're part of the Military Transition Roundtable. How would you say the Military Transition Roundtable has helped you in terms of easing your transition from taking care of your parents to your current position?
Well, I would say that there's some consummate professionals that are running the organization, like yourself and Don Gleason. But the idea is that you get several individuals or several people that are from the military that have questions that are really just pertinent to military folks that are transitioning out of service into the civilian workforce. And some of those folks have soldiers or airmen or Marines. They only have maybe 5 years getting out. So they have questions. And what is it like out there in corporate America? And then you have folks like me that have, 28 years. And those questions can be very different at different levels. And when you have many participants across the branches that have gotten out and have gotten jobs and are looking, that have questions for different points in their career, there's somebody that can answer and give hints, ideas, and to have a discussion on what they're facing or what their fears are when they bring it to the forefront. And you have a supportive group that can help them navigate that.
Thank you for that wonderful answer, and I appreciate that, and may cut that out for another purpose. So thank you for that. Now we'll open this up for questions from people in the group. Does anybody have a question for Charles at this point?
Yeah, well, Charles, hey, so this is Mike Michael. Like I said, is that I retired in 2004 and went immediately into the job working, blah, 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 blah. And then in March, the supply chain and the chip stuff eliminated my position. That was in March. So I'm building a new house right now. And just as we broke ground, my builder died. So I had to go and get another guy, and then keep him up. That's the only thing I could say would be filling in my gap. I never thought about putting that stuff in there. I mean, I'll give it a shot, but I didn't go out and build a house, and I didn't, but I got to keep my builder online, so to say. So we'll see. I didn't think about what you were saying and put it on there. Yeah, and you're right. Everybody can figure out how old you are by when did you graduate high school or join whatever. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure that one out.
Fortunately for everyone, diversity and inclusion is a huge focus at every company. And so I have seen more people in their 50s and 60s hired in the last 2 or 3 years than I saw in most of the rest of my career, because I never saw racial discrimination or sex discrimination, but I
Right.
did see a lot of age discrimination. And so it's so nice to see that fading. You know, I had a manager last week that hired someone that's 67. He said, well, if he works till 72, I 5 years out of my guys anyway. So why not? He can walk in and hit the ground running. And so I'm seeing
I was worried about, I've been to a couple of job fairs and they won't come out and ask you that, but they kind of like beat around the bush. And I was, look, I'll be honest, I'm no spring chicken, but I ain't looking for a 30-year career. You know, I'm looking to do 10 or 15 years and then I'll pop smoke. That's what I want to do.
Well,
Now,
just keep in mind, the average tenure at a company is like 4 or 5 years. So
Yeah.
no
I
matter
need,
what,
I
if
need
they
one
get-
more swing at the bait.
Yeah.
That's all I need.
And so they know that they know that if they land you and you're doing a good job, you're not going to go anywhere, where everyone else on their team is, let's say 30, 40, they always have to be worried about where they're going to go. And so there's a lot of stability and advantages to managers that are open to hiring more senior people. And so I'm finding a lot more success in that area.
Yeah.
But as far as your other comment, you know, I did a huge remodel, and, you know, you have to interview and make decisions on each one of the trades that you're going to bring in. You have to decide what materials you want. You have to decide.
Yeah,
the
but in all
design,
fairness, yeah, in
colors,
all
and-
fairness, so I had to go find another guy to go do all that, and he's doing it. But I,
Okay.
you know, but to keep them ever online, because I'm in a hurry to get the job done, because you know the housing is about to pop smoke again, and I got to sell the one I'm in to be able to afford what I'm building. So anyway,
Okay, but you know, to just sit down and think, if you could bullet point it,
right.
what would you put in? Because I think it's very positive to stage it as basically a job you've been doing.
Right. Yep.
So I see Irma and Matt in the watching this. Do you guys have questions?
No questions at this time. Thanks for all
I
the
don't
info.
have I don't have any questions as of yet either.
So my one comment that came out of my, you know, the elder workforce, you know, used to be an ageism thing, but now because of what's happened with COVID and all that, I think that's kind of changed the dynamics. Wouldn't you say there, Charles?
Well, that and workforce participation is down, and so you have to take advantage of the pool of people that you have available. And also, companies are having a lot of baby boomers retiring, and they have trouble replacing that high a skill set. And so it makes them a lot more flexible to interview a lot of different people.
I really appreciate that answer. I'm going to ask one last question before we, as to use the term, like Mike McHale, pop smoke on this little session. Is there anything else you'd like to add about things that people should do when they have gaps in their work history, or something else you'd like to say at this point?
I would say just be very positive about it. If you're doing an interview with an HR person or a manager and you're kind of making excuses for it, then they'll think that maybe you're worried about your skill set. But if you talk about how much you learned and how it broadened your outlook on things and how it really helped you to grow as a person, then that's going to be positive. If you say, well, you know, they didn't have the resources, I really needed to take care of them, then it's you just want to be positive and steer it towards how it's going to make you more qualified for the position. You don't want to go for the sympathy side, thinking everybody's had a family, everyone's had to deal with those same issues. You have to spin it in how it made you more capable of doing what you want to do.
So let me ask the question to my friend Sam. How did the experience with your gap help you today with the work, the job and the work you're doing right now?
It goes back into planning and organization. So I was basically between my wife in one location and me being in another location. It was balancing finances across two locations. So budgeting, scheduling things so that I knew what was going on over there that I might have to be aware of, as well as the things that were happening in New Mexico, where I was. And those are things that are being drawn upon at my new job that I'm working at. I'm doing stuff that's familiar to me in my experience as a signal officer. However, I have to build up new relationships with people that have been doing the work for several years. So part of what I was doing was building relationships in New Mexico with people that I didn't know, so that I could know who I need to call to take care of the house, or the vets to come in, or if there was a house problem. I'd have to learn who those folks are. And that's what I'm doing in my new job, is learning the new folks and learning who it is I need to talk to be able to solve problems.
So guys, this has been a really wonderful session. I think we've covered some of the issues with gaps in work history. We've talked about the positive side of learning new skills, embracing old skills, demonstrating those on your resume, also your LinkedIn profile, which I can help you with. And then what the impressions are being made on people like Charles, who's, you know, been in the human resources staffing world for over 2 decades. I think this has been a wonderful interview and a wonderful webinar. Again, this will be recorded. We'll put that out there once it's available, and we welcome anybody who's interested in the Military Transition Roundtable. You know, you can reach me. I'm at, you know, not hard to find. I'm d.mattscheer at LinkedIn, and I've got 11,000 friends that are on LinkedIn, and so I welcome the opportunity to talk to you about that. My colleague Don Gleason, who's off networking and building our foundation for our nonprofit, will tell you that he would also welcome the opportunity to talk to you as well. Again, from somewhat sunny San Antonio, although we're going to get rain tomorrow, this is Matt Scheer for the Military Transition Roundtable. It's been great talking to you all, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.